Finance Minister, it is very good to see you back. I was encouraged by a lot of the kind support shown to you by many Singaporeans, especially those across political divides. Unity is one of the most precious assets any country can boast of, and I will always be grateful for every year that we still possess this in Singapore. It is one of the richest parts of the inheritance we have received from our previous generations, and I pray it is something we will never squander. Budget 2017 declares that our future lies in moving forward together. But what does that really mean? Deputy Speaker, Sir, Finance Minister, America's motto was E pluribus unum, out of many, we are one. It is inscribed on every coin they have in circulation. It sat in the pockets of all their citizens as a daily reminder that unity was the very currency of their system. And yet, this is the very same country who just recently voted to take a massive hatchet to a system they felt was no longer trustworthy. For a large swathe of the American people, the system wasn't even about Republicans versus Democrats anymore. Many voters had lost all belief in the story both sides of leaders had told them about moving forward together. 40% of voters were so disheartened that they simply stayed at home, and many who did show up at the polls placed all their bets instead on an outsider who pitched an audacious story of let's just move only some of us forward together. A flood of articles have been written since then trying to understand why people would seemingly vote against their interests, and one common thread that was unearthed was this. To those who feel left behind, the story of prioritizing some over all was always the real story of the system anyway, and they had simply decided to play the game that they believed had been played on them. The true currency of any country is not in bills and coins, it's in trust. And it's always been in trust. The value of every country rises and falls according to the legacy of trust it still possesses and the level of trust it still inspires on an individual, institutional, and international level. And in a hyper-networked world, trust is the most important currency. And this is not a new observation. Many smart CEOs working in the new economy can tell you that, and many well-educated policymakers can tell you that, but all that foreknowledge has apparently done little to arrest the huge crisis of trust that the world is in now. The Edelman Trust Barometer has been tracking trust in 4 key institutions, business, government, NGOs, and media since 2012, and year on year, Edelman has seen public trust in these institutions decline across all 28 countries surveyed. The global rise of angry populism and pushback against elites that we see today is a result of unchecked erosion of trust from the past, coupled with present-day fears about the pace of change. And last year, Edelman reported the largest ever drop in trust across all 4 institutions. Trust in media is at all-time lows in 17 countries. Trust in government dropped in 14 markets, and it's now the least trusted institution in half of the 28 countries surveyed. The credibility of CEOs dropped globally to an all-time low in every country studied. And people are now more likely to trust search engines over human editors, individuals over institutions, and reformers more than preservers of status quo. Globally, 53% of respondents believe the current overall system has failed them and is unfair and offers them little hope for the future. Only 15% believe it is working, and the rest are just uncertain. So how did we do on the Trust Barometer? Apparently, Singapore is the 5th most high-trust nation, outranked only by India, China, Indonesia, and the United Arab Emirates. Compared to the global average of more than 50%, only 30% of respondents in Singapore believed the system was failing, while 43% said they were uncertain. So to be a country where public trust in all 4 institutions is still above 50% is now a thing of great value in an uncertain world. And our high trust climate is a rare thing which presents us opportunities we can leverage on. Deputy Speaker, it is not just deep reserves of financial capital from our past that we must invest in, protect and multiply. It's our deep reserves of social and emotional capital as well. And every country that hopes to ride out this global trust crisis must not only actively shore up trust in its system, it needs to also take a hard and honest look at where trust is being broken in its system and take noticeable, decisive steps to build it up again. One of the insights in the report that really struck me was the distinction between the responses from the informed public and responses from the mass population. The global gap between the level of trust felt by the informed public and that felt by the mass population has widened significantly, with the biggest disparities in the US, UK, and France. So if Edelman's findings are to be believed, we should not be surprised if the French election sees its own version of a Brexit or Trump shock result. You might be surprised to also hear that actually in America, the level of trust the informed public had in their system was almost as high as the level of trust our informed public had in our system. But it was the mass population respondents of America that ranked their system as deeply, deeply untrustworthy. And that explains the genuine shock felt by Washington and the wealthier coastal cities at the election results. In Singapore, the difference is still not so stark. Our mass population respondents still trusted Singapore enough to place it in the top 5. But 2017 was also the first time that our mass population respondents slid from being in the category of trusters to the category of neutrals. It's a small dip, but it's still worth paying attention to, because these respondents worried most about losing their jobs to immigrants and losing business opportunities to foreign competitors. And overwhelmingly, 70% of them believed the pace of change in business and industry was too fast. I do see the year-on-year efforts by the government to mitigate the cost of this pace of change. The Silver Support Scheme, Workfare, these are all good progressive moves towards strengthening our social safety nets. But what I also see is that these schemes still have much further to go to help Singaporeans who are feeling left behind. GST U-Safe vouchers, conservancy rebates, education subsidies, weekly food donations, these are all good things, and these are all greatly, greatly appreciated things. But for some of our struggling families, all these good and helpful gestures still feel like drops in a constantly leaking bucket. I am speaking especially for our working poor, the bottom 10% sandwich class who hold full-time jobs, who are making a real effort to support their family, but they still can't seem to break their poverty cycle. The ones who feel left out and left behind by our yearly calls to upskill and internationalize and innovate, not because they don't care, not because they're lazy, but because they're just busy trying not to drown under wave after wave of new demands and new costs and new changes to their world. To those who are drowning, even the calmest and most reasonable technocratic explanation about why a rise in water and motorcycle prices is justifiable will feel like salt on a wound. Because when you are drowning, all you want is for somebody to just stop talking, dive in and grab you before you sink. You don't care about the facts of the policies. Debates over what makes sense or doesn't make sense is all Greek to you. And what is most real and relevant to you is simply how those facts are making you feel. I don't have enough. I'll never have enough. And I'm not enough, and you don't care. When you're in that claustrophobic space of anxiety and scarcity, you don't have enough mental bandwidth to deal with anything more than each day's demands. And having that breathing space to consider alternative choices or plan for the future, that is a luxury the working poor do not have. And that's why compassionate communication of available solutions rather than a don't know, go talk to your MP approach by frontline officers matters so much. And that's why finding a way to provide more universal support for childcare, elder care, faster access to affordable housing, caregiver respite across all classes of people matters so much. Because all of these interventions go a very long way to create bandwidth, a space for the drowning to feel like they can breathe again. We are missing a big point if we say, well, people must deal with the facts as they are, not where they feel they should be. But honestly, nobody understands their life just according to facts. It's an intellectual's fantasy to believe we are perfectly rational, fact-driven beings, and most people make their choices according to their feelings about the facts. So if we care about making sure people hear us out on the hard facts about our country's real situation, then we must start all our communications with connecting with people with where they are, which is how they feel, even if that feeling is disagreeable or irrational to us. If not, let's just accept that your words may never impact anyone outside your echo chamber. We cannot effectively uplift our working poor if we do not connect our solutions more effectively to the deep narratives and emotional realities that they live in. We love the idea of being a smart city that uses big data to solve our wicked problems, but I sincerely hope we will also fall in love with the idea of being a wise city that looks at deep data as well, to make sure the policies we come up with are not just technical solutions, but empathetic human solutions that resonate with the communities they were always meant to serve. I am not an economist. I don't know enough numbers to put up an elegant fight to justify a request for X dollar increase in workfare and Y dollar increase in silver support. And there are far more convincing experts in this room and beyond who will make that case. But I will nevertheless go on a limb to state my assessment that if we don't want our system to slide into the levels of toxic distrust we see elsewhere, we must move away from safe and small incremental steps and take larger paradigm-shifting changes on a systems level to help the least in our land. And we should take those steps sooner rather than later, because right now we still have time. All I want us to just consider is this. Knowing what they know now and seeing what they see now, what would Washington's elites have done different for their poorest states if they could just time travel back 4 years, 2 years, or even 1 year back? If Downing Street could time travel, what would they have done different for their most depressed regions to prevent Brexit? Some decisions that looked too high risk and too ridiculous back then, I am sure, suddenly look very well worth investing in now because they finally see the high-stake consequences at last. But they can't go back. They can never go back. Their time for intervention has passed them by. But ours has not. So what can we do? What will we do and what must we do to stave off a future shock scenario of our own? The budget speech declared we can aim for quality growth of 2 to 3% if we work hard to help everyone who wishes to work find a place in the labour force. It also said, on the social front, Budget 2017 supports families who wish to buy a home, experience the joys of parenthood and help their children towards post-secondary education. So what can we do for our working poor, especially those in single-parent or sandwiched class families, so that they may feel included in those statements as well? Consider just one kind of life story, a composite based on real stories familiar to our local social workers. A woman gets divorced, she gains custody of her 3 kids, but no promise of maintenance. She applies for a rental flat. The frontline officer tells her that her $1,600 monthly salary disqualifies her under the $1,500 income cap. She's advised to beat the system by stopping work, apply for a rental flat, and start work again. But she doesn't quit her job because she loves her work, she needs her work. Giving up salary even for a month is not an option. Her sympathetic MP advocates for her, but after 20 letters of back and forth, and hours of MPS sessions, no one's any wiser, not even her own MP, about why an exception cannot be made for her case. She can't afford a down payment for a flat. None of her relatives or friends has space to spare her little family. She rents on the open market, but rents are high and leases are short. She moves 4 times in 5 years, her savings drained down. When her boss offers her a higher paying job opportunity, she has to turn it down because she can't work far away from her child's preschool. She knows she can't pick up her child on time, not by bus, which is all she can afford. Plus they need her to work nights when she has 0 childcare options. And then the health issues crop up. First her kids, then her parents, and then their damn electrical fuse box has to blow up, forcing her to choose between paying for the lights to come back on or buying better food for her kids. And some nights at the end of some very, very, very bad days, she considers just giving it up. Because why try so hard? Taking up a lower paying job to at least get a rental flat of her own where her kids can study in peace suddenly feels like the smartest and safest decision in the world. Are you tired even just listening to that story? Because she sure the heck is tired living it. And you have to appreciate that for many of the poor, they believe that they will never not feel tired. All she wants is to move her life forward again, together with everyone else she sees around her, but there are all these structural hurdles that keep coming up her way. What is the Singapore of her experience? What is the Singapore we want her to experience? And what is the Singapore story we hope she'll pass down to her children? Does this user experience of the Singapore system matter to us enough to form a strategic team and warrant a complete overhaul of her customer journey? Is her trust and her children's trust equally worthy of winning as the trust of a university grad or a corporate high flyer? And if she still stays resilient all the way through, and if she still maintains her high trust in our system despite every trouble she's endured, is that not more of a testament of strength on her part rather than ours? And should she lose trust in our system, whose job will it be to help her find it again? I do not believe the answer is the government alone. That's the easiest answer. The hardest answer is it's all of us. It always has been and it always will be. They say you become an adult the first time you realize that nothing is truly free, and everything worthy comes at a price. Everything good costs someone something. We just seldom want to be the one footing the bill. In every request for a right, there is always a correlated offer of responsibility. It is easier to say moving words about the equal rights we want every Singaporean to have than to say the challenging words about the equal responsibilities those rights require every Singaporean to take on. But if we who request for those rights are not prepared to take on some measure of the correlated responsibilities demanded of us through taxes or donations or volunteering, then our request feels that much less honest and much less powerful. So just as much as I wish for the state to stay open to radical solutions, I also see that we, the people, have to stay equally open to the radical responsibilities that these solutions may place on us. If there is a need to pay higher taxes someday, as the Minister hinted, in order to build a better system that moves everyone forward together, I think many Singaporeans will be prepared to bite that bullet because we are a far more generous people than we give ourselves credit for. But that's the catch. Trust has to be very high for that to happen. And I believe there are many taxpayers and voters on the ground who will still need to be more honestly engaged and deeply convinced that this system story is genuinely about moving everyone forward together and not just moving some of us forward together. And so we need more honest and open conversations on that front. Let me close with a story. American author Ursula Le Guin wrote a provocative little parable called The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. In that story, an unnamed narrator guides us through the fantastical city of Omelas and takes us on a dizzying tour of the city's amazing technology and wonderful people. But the journey takes a dark turn when we're led down into a basement tucked beneath this beautiful city. Imprisoned in that basement is a weak and wretched child, and the narrator tells us to accept that in some mysterious way, should this child ever be set free, the whole city's success will be utterly compromised. We are asked to accept that all the freedoms the many enjoy above is wholly and inarguably dependent on the oppression of the one beneath. And the most disturbing part about Omelas' secret is that it isn't a secret. We're told that every citizen there who comes of age has been ushered into this very room to see the truth for themselves. They'll all get upset, most eventually accept that life is just about terrible trade-offs, and so the status quo continues. The tale ends on a mixed note, talking about a small handful of citizens who choose to walk silently away from the city towards an unknown destination that the narrator warns may not even exist. And the story is disturbing because everyone who reads it knows instinctively how true to life that story is for every city in the world. Every city has a child in the basement and a nagging feeling that they all share in the complicity of keeping that child there. I've always wondered whether the narrator of that story was meant to be an unreliable narrator, pushing out a narrative that deserves to be challenged. When I think about the parallels to Singapore, I see narratives that need to be constantly questioned rather than casually accepted as sacrosanct. Is it really true that once we give mandatory off days to our foreign domestic workers, we will see the instant collapse of our work-life balance? Is it for real that if we free our children from the tyranny of early streaming and high-stakes exams, we will see our future workforce become that much less rigorous? And is it for certain that if we uplift our poor through more generous welfare, we will see the decimation of Singapore's culture of hard work? Perhaps. Or perhaps not. We don't know without engaging in honest conversation with everyone, especially the ones who respectfully but deeply disagree with us. There are Singaporeans out there who ask hard questions. There are Singaporeans out there who even live out hard answers to those hard questions. And some of them are still here, still open, still pushing the boundaries. But some of them have already reached their breaking points, where they have decided they are done with this city. They're done with trusting, done with trying, and done with the heartbreak of putting up with those who passively accept the unfairness. They may still be here in body, but in spirit they are already walking away from their Omelas. I don't know how, and certainly I know I sound naive, but I will always hope that we can be that country where more of us are able to say to the ones who walk away, stay, help me see what you see, and permit me to share what I see as well. Because in a world that's threatening to grow apart, our small city needs more ones who walk towards than ones who walk away more than ever. The ones who dare to go where few want to go, towards each other, towards the conflicts, towards the problems, towards the solutions, and most profoundly, towards the children in the basement who still long to be free. Our city needs us. It has always needed every one of us, perhaps more than we will ever know. Finance Minister, I do support your bill, but allow me also the space to hope that each new budget you bring will be one that finds new ways to bring ever more help and ever more hope to the drowning ones and the ones in the basement that need it most. Because this is their city too. Thank you.